Hey guys, tonight we begin our journey on the misty plains before Ilion's towering walls. You wake to the gentle light of dawn creeping over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of rose and amber that feel like warm tea steeping in a delicate porcelain cup. The air carries a crisp tang of salt from the nearby Aegean, and the faintest whisper of wild grasses brushing against stone like nature's own lullaby, nudging you awake. You probably wouldn't survive a day in full hoplite armor, but right now you're just observing, so feel free to stretch luxuriously. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. In this moment, you stand on a gentle slope just beyond Ilion's outer defenses. The walls rise before you, an unbroken sweep of sun-dappled limestone, reaching nearly 9 meters high enough to make even the boldest warrior hesitate at the base. You can almost feel the weight of centuries pressing down as you gaze up at those massive stones, each one hewn by master stonemasons whose names have long since vanished beneath layers of mortar and myth. It's said that Heinrich Schliemann, a 19th century archaeologist, first identified this site as the legendary Troy while wearing a monocle and an enthusiasm bordering on obsession, a fact so widely known that most school kids learn it by the time they can recite their ABCs. You take a slow breath, inhaling the earthy scent of dew-soaked mortar mingled with the faint sweetness of wild thyme. The ground underfoot is cool, and you notice tiny tufts of lavender pushing through cracks between paving slabs, an oddity, perhaps considering most lavender you've seen grows on sun-baked hillsides. Legend has it that a stray goat once carried back a sprig of this plant in its fur, accidentally seeding it here centuries ago. Now it thrives in secret, as though the walls themselves invited this gentle color into their austere embrace. As the dawn chorus begins chirps and trills from unseen songbirds, you press a palm against the cool stone. You feel the faint vibration of early activity within the city, hammers tapping on forges, the clatter of pottery wheels spinning to life, and distant murmurs that ripple outward like soft waves. You taste the tang of metal on your tongue as a blacksmith's first spark flies upward, reminding you that even in peaceful moments, Ilion is prepared. After all, the walls weren't erected overnight. Local tradition holds that Poseidon himself lent his divine strength to the original foundation, an eccentric but enduring tale. In reality, the fortifications date back to around the 7th century BCE, when the city expanded its perimeter to defend against raiders from the sea. Your footfalls echo faintly as you move closer, and you notice that each course of stone is meticulously aligned thewwork of skilled hands that knew the secrets of interlocking blocks and tight mortar joints. You might joke that these architects invented the first dry stack technique long before modern engineers bragged about it. But for now, you simply admire the precision. You run your fingertips along a corner where 2 walls meet, feeling a hairline crack that suggests centuries of settling beneath Trojan feet and marching legions alike. A lone guard appears at a parapet above you, his silhouette framed against the rosy sky. He shifts his weight, squaring broad shoulders that might someday carry the bronze gleam of a breastplate. You imagine him as a silhouette in a fresco, immortalized alongside gods and heroes. He glances your way, and you offer a silent nod, an exchange that feels intimate in this quiet hour. There's something comforting in his steady presence, as though the stones and the soldier share a silent vow to keep the city safe. Historically, those ramparts repelled not only Achaean knights, but also earthquakes. Tablets discovered in the 20th century reveal that local priests performed rites after tremors, convinced that displeased deities needed appeasement. Your heart thumps in time with the waking city, a gentle rhythm that carries both excitement and an undercurrent of apprehension. After all, these walls have witnessed more than mere dawns. They've stood through sieges remembered in epic poems, held back armies fueled by divine grudges, and according to an offbeat local story, even absorbed the laughter of children playing tag in shadowed alleyways. It is said that on the summer solstice, sunbeams align with a hidden notch above the north gate, casting a narrow beam that illuminates a carved symbol of a horse's head, an eerie precursor to a much larger wooden equine that would change history. That peculiar alignment might just be the world's most subtle Easter egg. You let your gaze wander upward where the battlements crest the sky. Each merlin and embrasure stands ready to house archers or sling stones, functional yet almost architectural, like ancient skyscrapers commanding the horizon. A light breeze stirs, carrying specks of dust that dance in the slanting rays, forming tiny golden constellations around you. For a moment, you close your eyes and simply listen. The tremor of distant waves, the scrape of leather sandals on stone, and that pervasive hum of anticipation, as though the walls themselves hold their breath. Then, as if on cue, a horn echoes faintly from the city's interior, a low, resonant note that vibrates in your chest. It's the signal that Ilion is fully awake, that lives are stirring behind these ramparts. Bakers tending ovens, scribes unsealing clay tablets, and sentries taking their first watches of the day. You sense a living organism in these stones, each brick laid with intention and care, each crack a record of storms weathered and battles survived. You step back, pulling your cloak tighter as the sun inches higher, revealing details you might have missed at dawn's first glow. Faint graffiti names and symbols scratched by travelers over centuries dot the lower courses of stone. Amid common marks, you spot a curious doodle of a hare chained to an anchor, an obscure motif that local storytellers claim references, a wandering philosopher's paradox about freedom and responsibility. You chuckle softly. Who knew ancient street art could be so existential? With one last look, you prepare to follow the path that skirts the wall, eager to explore hidden posterns and whispering corridors carved into its shadowed base. But for now, you carry with you the solemn wonder of standing before Ilion's first light, aware that history and myth entwine in these weathered stones, and that your own story is about to merge with theirs. You move forward along the worn flagstones that funnel toward Ilion's great gate, each footstep stirring up tiny eddies of dust that hover momentarily before drifting away. The gate towers above you, its twin doors of aged bronze, streaked green by centuries of weather and time, an emerald patina that glints softly in the early sun. You pause at the threshold, taking in the heavy lintel carved with figures nearly life-size. Warriors locked in combat, chariots racing across dunes, and deities with flowing robes and stern expressions. The craftsmanship is so detailed that you can almost count the rivets on their armor, as if the sculptor intended you to study every fold of a cloak and every curl of a beard. As you step closer, you notice a band of heroes from ages past, faces half eroded, but still proud. There's Achilles wielding his spear with resolute fury, his expression frozen in the moment before battle. Next to him, Hector braces his shield, eyes set on an unseen foe beyond the stone. You catch yourself wondering what it must have felt like to stand where they are, racing against the rush of an oncoming army, heart pounding like the beat of a distant drum. It's the sort of scene that makes you grateful you're just a quiet traveler, not a frontline warrior. Your fingers brush against the cool metal of the door, and you feel the faint tremor of movement behind it as a guard unlatches from the inside. The hinges groan a low, rumbling invitation that resonates in your chest. A shaft of light spills into the passage beyond, revealing the thickness of these walls, nearly 5 meters from face to core. You're overwhelmed by the sheer scale. It's hard to imagine how anyone could hope to dismantle such a barrier. Rumor has it that during a particularly fierce earthquake in the Hellenistic period, the walls survived with barely a crack, inching only a couple of centimeters before settling again, as if the stones themselves flexed but refused to break. Inside the archway, the air changes. It's cooler here, shaded by the mass of stone above, and infused with the faint scent of oil from torches that line the corridor. The flicker of flame dances across carved reliefs that depict scenes of sacrifice and supplication, priests offering hecatombs to shield the city from plague, mothers clutching infants with desperate hope, and processions honoring Athena, patroness of wisdom and warfare. Each panel is separated by slender columns topped with volutes that echo northern Greek architectural styles, an influence that likely arrived here during Ilion's period of expansion in the 6th century BCE, when traders and artisans from across the Aegean brought their own artistic traditions into the city. A low chuckle escapes you as you spot a delicate carving of a hare perched atop a soldier's helmet, not a common motif. You think. Local storytellers say it represents the fleeting nature of peace. The hare darts in and out of sight, just as calm moments can vanish once war appears. Historically, hares were actually kept near the gates as a kind of early warning system when their restless scratching went silent. It meant an approaching storm or an enemy force, since the animals could sense vibrations in the earth before humans could. You imagine a battalion of hares lined up along the parapets, twitching their noses in unison, and can't help but grin at the absurdity. Your gaze drifts upward to where the relief of Athena stands guard above the central keystone. She grips a spear in one hand and holds her shield in the other, her gaze fixed down the main thoroughfare that leads to the heart of the city. They say that when Ilion was at its zenith, priests would parade an effigy of Athena through this gate during the Panathenaic festival, and the people believed that her protective spirit walked these streets for a day. Even now you can almost feel the echo of festival flutes and the soft tread of sandal-shod feet celebrating beneath the same stone arch. You continue forward, noticing that the floor slopes gently upward, designed to hinder the momentum of any battering ram attempting to strike the doors. It's a subtle architectural trick, born of hard-won experience after early attacks revealed that flat surfaces only aided aggressive engines of war. As you walk, your mind drifts to the siege machines gathered by the Achaeans, towering towers on wheels, iron-tipped rams weighted with lead, and catapults flinging stones the size of your head. None of them could conquer this gate without first smashing through dozens of meters of earth and stone. A sudden breeze wafts through, carrying with it the murmur of voices from beyond. The corridor widens into a small courtyard where sentries stand at ease, leaning on their spears and exchanging morning greetings. Their armor catches the light, sending a sparkle across the worn cobbles. You slip in among them, nodding as if you belong, and notice a small mosaic just inside the courtyard wall. A circular design of interlocking dolphins, their bodies curved in an endless dance. Dolphins were sacred to Poseidon, of course, and pirates would sometimes paint similar patterns on their ships to invoke his goodwill. The mosaic's vibrant tesserae have dulled over time, but you can still trace the swirling motion of waves and fins. Just beyond this courtyard, the gates stand closed but unguarded for all travelers, merchants, and pilgrims who seek entry. You press your hand against the bronze again, feeling the cool surface warmed slightly by the rising sun. It's tempting to imagine what lies on the other side. Bustling markets filled with exotic spices, the aroma of fresh bread mingling with the brine of salted fish, and artisans crafting pottery decorated with the same myths you've seen carved above. A merchant from Rhodes once claimed that the finest honey for sale inside these walls came from hives perched on the cliff faces nearby, a curious combination of wild mountain thyme and sea breeze that produced a flavor both sharp and sweet. You take a deep breath and push the door inward. The weight surprises you, far heavier than it looks, but it yields with a slow, sonorous creak. The world beyond unfurls, a broad street paved in black basalt, flanked by colonnaded shops and public fountains, where water trickles in a soothing rhythm. In the distance you catch glimpses of bannered standards fluttering in the breeze, each pennant bearing the emblem of a Trojan family. You feel a thrill of anticipation, as though you're stepping not only into a city, but into a living poem, one that has been composed over thousands of years. As the gate swings fully open, a sudden warmth rushes in, carrying the scents, sounds, and colors of Ilion into the shaded corridor. You pause on the threshold, savoring the contrast. The quiet intimacy of the gate's inner sanctum behind you, the vibrant life of the city ahead. The transition feels like breathing in a new world, and with that, you take your first true step into Ilion's embrace, ready to lose yourself in its stories, its people, and the echoes of wars yet to come. You step beyond the great doors into a cool corridor, lined with smooth marble slabs, each polished so finely that your reflection blurs into the grain of the stone. As your footsteps sound against the floor, they vanish almost instantly, swallowed by the corridor's vaulted ceiling and bouncing back as a soft whisper. You lean in close to the wall, half expecting to hear ancient conversations replaying themselves, a senator complaining about olive oil taxes, or a baker grumbling that his morning rolls never crisped properly. If these stones could talk, you suspect they'd ask for a dramatic raise in their daily allowance of incense. Lanterns hang from bronze hooks at irregular intervals, their flickering flames casting dancing shadows that stretch and shrink in time with your breathing. Each lantern is inset with colored glass emerald greens, ruby reds, and amber yellows that tints the white marble in jewel tones. You watch as the shadows undulate, forming shapes that almost look like figures in togas gliding along the walls. You imagine yourself in a slow-motion toga party, complete with awkward chit-chat and someone accidentally stepping on grapes. Thankfully, the only thing you're stepping on here is your own awe. The corridor widens into a small chamber where 3 great columns rise, their fluted shafts carved from single blocks of stone. You run your fingers over the grooves, marveling at the precision. There is not a single chip or misshapen ridge. These columns must have been quarried from a distant mountain, perhaps even Mount Hymettus in Attica. Famed for its pure white marble, used in the Parthenon and transported across the Aegean in ships, so overloaded that the sailors jokingly referred to them as floating marble pies. You resist the urge to tap on the column like a glass blower testing crystal, but you can't help smiling when the note rings clear and surprisingly musical. From the center of the chamber, a narrow passage branches off on each side. You choose the left path, where the floor slopes downward and the air grows hushed, as though the walls themselves absorbed sound. At the base of the slope, the corridor opens to reveal a hidden alcove, a small pool of water fed by an underground spring. The water is so clear you can see a school of tiny silver fish gliding beneath the surface, their scales reflecting the lantern light. You kneel at the edge, cupping a handful and tasting its cool purity. So sweet it reminds you of mountain dew without the caffeine crash. According to local legend, this spring never froze, even in the coldest winters, and priests claimed its waters carried prophetic visions if sipped under a full moon. You can't help wondering if you dream of sea serpents or just of losing your sandals again. Above the pool, low-relief carvings chart a series of processions, priests bearing offerings of honeycombs and wine, citizens leading sacrificial goats, and children carrying amphorae decorated with stylized hoplites. The style is unmistakably influenced by late archaic Greek sculpture, an era when artists first experimented with more lifelike forms and expressive faces. You trace the curve of a child's cheek and catch yourself thinking, even in marble, kids have that irresistible puppy-dog look. You chuckle, imagining stone toddlers begging for marble cookies. Pressing on, you enter a long gallery where niches hold life-size statues of legendary figures. At one end stands a towering image of King Priam, draped in regal robes and holding a scroll. On the scroll is inscribed the decree that once welcomed any supplicant who dared stand before Ilion's gates. You step close, feeling dwarfed by his stone presence, and imagine him issuing proclamations in a booming voice. No sandals, no service, except on market day. You stifle a laugh. Even a king needs to set boundaries. Midway along the gallery, a soft, repetitive drip echoes from somewhere above. You look up to see a tiny skylight, a delicate oculus, perhaps 2 meters across, where rainwater once trickled in during storms. Now it forms small rivulets that gather on the ledges before dropping in rhythmic taps. It's like nature's own metronome, keeping time for you as you walk. You pause under that oculus, counting 7 distinct drips before turning away, half expecting to find a hidden message spelled out in the stone. Alas, the only message seems to be, remember to fix the roof, spotting a tiny skeleton curled in fetal position. So small it might belong to a rodent, yet wrapped in the remains of a miniature cloak. Local storytellers whisper that in times of crisis, Trojans sacrificed beloved pets alongside grain offerings to appease the gods, believing even animals shared the city's fate. Whether that's true or just fanciful gossip, you can't shake the poignancy of that tiny stone sarcophagus. As you emerge from the gallery, the corridor narrows again until you're surrounded by walls so close they almost touch your shoulders. Here, the echoes intensify. Your whisper sounds like a shout, and your heartbeat thrums in your ears like a funeral drum. You pause, placing a hand on the marble, and you feel the faint hum of hidden passages long forgotten. Tunnels that fan out beneath the city like the veins of an ancient leaf. Some were used to manage water flow, others to smuggle messages during sieges. Imagine a hive of earthen paths where couriers once darted beneath enemy lines, carrying news of victory or defeat in their leather satchels. You step briskly through that gauntlet of sound, eager for open space again. When the corridor finally widens, you find yourself back in the daylight, standing before another massive gateway that leads to the central square. The echo of your passage still lingers, a soft, resonant reminder of how alive the stones can feel when you listen closely. You wipe your palms on your leggings, glancing back at the marble halls with a newfound respect. They're not just corridors of stone and mortar. They're the city's memory, an archive of whispers, footsteps, and the laughter of generations long past. With a deep breath, you push open the second gate and step out into the warm glow of Ilion's mid-morning bustle. Behind you, the marble halls settle into quiet again, awaiting the next traveler brave enough to trace their echoes. And as you rejoin the living tapestry of the city, you carry with you the hush of those secret corridors, proof that sometimes the softest sounds leave the deepest impressions. You step onto a gently sloping ramp that hugs the outer face of Ilion's walls, feeling the rough-hewn limestone under your sandals. With every step, you notice chisel marks, parallel grooves running 5 centimeters apart that catch the light and cast tiny shadows. These aren't random scratches. They're the signature of the stonemasons who quarried and trimmed each block. You lean closer, fingertips brushing the stone, and try to imagine the rhythmic clang of hammer and chisel echoing along this very ramp so many centuries ago. Long ago, these stones were extracted from a nearby hill, what modern archaeologists call Hisarlik, then ferried down narrow paths on rollers made of tree trunks. It's said that during high summer the workers would coat the wood with animal fat, so the blocks slid more easily. The grease must have smelled like a tavern basement after a festival, but the efficiency was worth it. They could move a 10-ton block with just 30 laborers and a handful of oiled logs. You smile at the thought of an ancient slip end slide, picturing a bellowing foreman shouting, "Don't drop it, or you owe me your tunic," a time when Lycians and Carians introduced innovative fortification methods to the Hittite city. Later, in the 6th century BCE, Trojan architects widened the walls and reinforced them with earthen embankments, creating a double shell structure that could absorb battering without collapsing. This technique echoing principles used by Phoenicians in Sidon and Tyre allowed the walls to flex rather than shatter, much like a modern earthquake-resistant building swaying instead of crumbling. You notice the course of blocks where 2 different textures meet, older, rougher stones abutting smoother, later additions. It's as if the wall is a living tapestry, stitched together by generations of master builders. You imagine each team signing their labor with subtle marks, a star motif here, a diagonal cross there. During restoration work in the 1930s, archaeologists discovered over 50 unique masons' marks, some geometric, some whimsical, hinting at friendly rivalry among crews. You can almost hear them boasting at the tavern afterward, bragging whose stones stayed truest under siege. Halfway up the ramp, you pause at a small niche cut into the wall. It's barely 2 meters high and barely wide enough for a crouching figure. According to local lore, this was the inspection hatch where the head architect, known simply as Archostratus, would climb and observe the masonry, ensuring each block met his exacting standards. Archostratus was rumored to keep a pet raven that he trained to hitch rides on his shoulder during inspections. The bird served as a mobile spirit level, squawking whenever it sensed imbalance. Whether that's true or just a playful rumor, you can't help chuckling at the image of a bird squawking, too tilted, in perfect avian pitch. Higher still, you reach the terrace walk and elevated pathway behind the battlements. The parapet here is lined with triangular crenellations, each measuring precisely 1 meter wide at the base and tapering to half a meter at the top. This uniformity wasn't an accident. It optimized both defense and construction speed. Trojans would pour a quicklime-based mortar between the stones, a recipe mixing pulverized lime, volcanic ash brought by Ionian traders, and crushed seashells from the nearby shore. Some texts claim the carbonate and seashells reacted with the ash, creating a self-healing mortar that filled small cracks over time. You brush your hand along a horizontal seam and feel a faint, almost satisfying click where a tiny gap sealed itself decades ago. From this vantage point, you gaze out across the plain toward the Aegean, where the first Greek ships must have appeared as tiny white specks on the horizon. You imagine Archostratus standing here centuries ago, sketchbook in hand, calculating angles and stresses by the light of a single oil lamp. The faint scent of olive oil and pine resin drifts on the breeze, mixing with the briny tang carried inland by sea winds. You breathe deeply, feeling connected to those ancient hands that laid these stones with careful precision. A sudden gust stirs a swarm of bees that have taken up residence in a small crevice just below the walkway. Instead of swarming angrily, they hum in unison, as if serenading the wall itself. According to an eccentric anecdote, locals believed these wall bees were guardians of the city's memory. Killing one risked bringing bad luck to families for 7 generations. In truth, the bees likely nested behind a loose stone, but the legend adds a layer of mystique that makes you bow your head respectfully before continuing. You approach a corner tower where the wall turns 90 degrees, then transition onto its guard walkway. Here, the stones bear deeper grooves channels, designed to direct rainwater away from the foundation and into subterranean drainage channels. Without this clever subtlety, torrential winter rains would have undermined the walls from below. You crouch to peer down a narrow slit and spot the mouth of a clogged channel, half filled with pebbles and dried leaves. You make a mental note to clear it, though, of course. That's a job for another you, another time. Inside the tower's chamber, the floor is paved with tightly fitted slab stones, worn smooth by centuries of soldiers pacing their vigil. You step inside, and the acoustics change dramatically. Your voice booms back at you, distorted and cavernous. It feels like speaking inside a conch shell carved from stone. You clear your throat, imagining the commanding shout of a centurion summoning reinforcements. Fortify the east wall, and someone get me more hyssop oil for these torches. You stifle a laugh at the absurdity. Before you retrace your steps, you study a curious symbol scratched into the stone near the door, a stylized depiction of a labyrinth, not unlike the one said to adorn King Minos's palace in Crete. Scholars believe these carvings were apotropaic symbols, intended to ward off evil spirits or distract wandering ghosts. Imagine a specter stumbling into a stone maze, lost for all eternity, at least until happy hour. As you descend the ramp and rejoin the sunlit exterior, you take one last look at the patterns of stonework, the alternating bands of lighter and darker limestone, the precise joints, the hidden drainage grooves, all testaments to mastery and innovation. You wonder how many stonemasons, architects, and laborers had their lives intertwined with these ramparts, sacrificing sweat and song to build a city that would echo through legend. And as you walk on, you carry with you not just the weight of the stones, but the weight of human ingenuity, collaboration, and the occasional raven's wink of sarcasm. You round a weathered corner of the ramparts and come upon a massive basin carved into the stone, an ancient reservoir that once caught rainwater from the battlements above. Droplets still collect in its shallow bowl, glimmering like liquid glass when the sun's rays strike just right. You lean over the edge, feeling the cool mist rising from the basin, and catch a faint scent of sea salt, mingled with limestone. It's here, locals say, that Poseidon himself lent his divine hand to Ilion's defenses, shaping the walls with a single sweep of his trident. According to the myth, when Troy first rose from the earth, its high priests petitioned the gods for protection. Poseidon, god of the sea and master builder of Olympus, strode down from his palace beneath the waves, leaving a trail of foam in his wake. He stood before the nascent city and with a gesture carved out the river beds that still flow through the plain today. Then he raised his trident and struck the ground, creating not only the city's aqueducts, but every stone in the mighty walls themselves. You can almost hear the reverberation of that divine impact in the hum of the wind against the battlements. You run your fingers along the edge of the basin, tracing the grooves that local storytellers claim were etched by the god's claws. The carving is so precise, so deeply set into the rock, that skeptics say it must have been the work of master artisans rather than a deity having an off day. You can't suppress a smirk at the image of Poseidon grimacing through granite dust, muttering if only these mortals knew how long it takes to refill a mold. In reality, the reservoir dates back to Hellenistic renovations around 300 BCE, a time when engineers across the Mediterranean perfected rain catchment systems to support expanding populations. A breeze stirs and sends a gentle ripple across the reservoir's surface, making the reflected clouds dance. You squat beside it and dab your fingertip into the water, tasting that same crisp purity you encountered in the spring chamber. As you lift your hand, a drop falls back and hits the basin with a soft plink like a cymbal in a miniature orchestra. You smile, imagining an entire ensemble of raindrops performing a subtle symphony just for you. Nearby, nestled in a crevice between two stones, you spot a curious object, a small clay figurine shaped like a seahorse, its surface smoothed by centuries of wind and rain. Local legend says that whenever a Trojan builder uncovered such a figurine, he or she tucked it back into the walls as an offering to Poseidon, ensuring the sea god's favor and perhaps better weather for shipping grain. You pick it up, running your thumb across the carved ridges, and wonder what the original owner thought as they pressed this little creature into fresh mortar. Maybe they hoped their work would be as enduring as this tiny tribute. You stand and follow a faint channel that leads from the basin toward a narrow slit in the wall. It's an ingeniously hidden outlet, designed to drain overflow without letting enemy spies peer inside. You crouch to peer through and see the channel snaking around the inner core, barely wide enough for a child to crawl. You imagine secret messages slipping through this passage under the cover of night, penned by desperate defenders or cunning conspirators. And if rumors are to be believed, some missives were delivered by pigeons, each bird fitted with a tiny scroll tied to its leg, proof that in ancient times even carrier pigeons had more secure lanes than modern internet. Returning to the basin, you notice a faint inscription carved in Ionic script along the rim. It reads, "Water is life and stone is our shield." Beneath that, there's a smaller, nearly illegible scrawl, "And beer helps too, Bacchus." You laugh at the idea of a tipsy mason signing his work with divine endorsement. Perhaps he imagined that after a long day hauling blocks, a good amphora of wine was as crucial as any mortar. You trace the main channel with your gaze, where it disappears into a wider cavity and then splits off in 3 directions like roots feeding a living organism. One branch leads toward the central courtyard, another toward the watchtowers, and the third toward the riverbank, where the city's granaries stood. You picture soldiers filling their leather flasks here before a siege, knowing that this water was blessed by Poseidon's touch, divine hydration, if you will. They'd probably joked among themselves that if the sea god had any sense of irony, he would have also made the walls unsinkable. A sudden call echoes from above you, a guard ringing a small bronze bell to signal the changing of the watch. The note rings out clear and bright, sending a thrill through your spine. You look up to see the next sentry leaning over the battlements, scanning the horizon. Her cloak flutters like a banner in the breeze, and you wonder what thoughts occupy her mind, whether she believes in Poseidon's legend or chalks it up to tavern tales. You find a flat stone nearby, smooth as a tabletop, and sit down, letting the city's pulse wash over you. The laughter of children playing near the marketplace drifts up, mixed with the rhythmic clank of a blacksmith's hammer. Somewhere below, the faint splash of water suggests fishers tending their nets in the river channel. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, feeling as if you've become part of this living tableau. The myth of Poseidon's hand is just a story, of course, but in moments like these, stories are the threads that bind you to the past. When you rise, you tuck the seahorse figurine into your pocket, an impromptu souvenir, and stand facing the reservoir once more. The light has shifted. Clouds now wrap the basin in soft shadows, making the water look like liquid silver. You lift your hand in a loose salute to the stone and water below, offering your own silent thanks to the ancient builders and to Poseidon, wherever he may be. Then, with a final glance at the trickling basin and its storied waters, you turn to continue your exploration of Ilion's formidable walls, carrying with you a touch of divine intrigue and the echo of myth beneath your feet. You descend from the ramparts and find yourself amid a swirl of activity. At the base of Ilion's walls, merchants squat on low stools, their wares spread out on woven mats that ripple in the morning breeze. The air is thick with the scent of exotic spices, cumin and coriander, so pungent you can almost taste them before their merchants' jars even open. You inhale deeply, catching a whiff of pressed figs and crushed almonds as a trader from Lydia scoops handfuls of sweet kernels into a clay jar. It's said that Lydia's gold coins first circulated here in the 7th century BCE, making Ilion not only a strategic fortress but a bustling economic hub at the crossroads of Asia and Europe. To your right, a caravan of donkeys clatters over flagstones, each animal laden with bales of fine Tyrian purple-dyed cloth. The dye is so rich it stains fingertips through thin gloves, and you imagine the luxury it signifies when draped on a senator's shoulder during a festival. A young apprentice, his tunic already streaked with violet, swipes at a stubborn stain and mutters about the extra wash cycles. He'll owe his master tonight. Hardly the glamorous life you pictured. Nearby, a sturdy cart brims with amphorae sealed with olive oil that glints like liquid gold, as if Persephone herself had lent her shine. You weave through the crowds, brushing past a squat merchant who haggles over silver anklets imported from the Black Sea region. He holds one up to the sun like a jeweler inspecting a diamond, noting how its tiny bells tinkle with every turn. According to local lore, these bells once served as early alarm systems. When a thief tried to slip away with a coin pouch, the jangling would alert nearby guards. Whether that's true or just a tavern tale, you can't help smiling at the thought of a would-be pickpocket outpaced by jingling jewelry. A cluster of Persians has set up an open chest of lapis lazuli and carnelian beads so vivid they look as if someone trapped a fragment of sunrise inside each stone. You crouch to examine the beads and feel their cool surfaces, picturing them strung into necklaces destined for Trojan brides. It occurs to you that lapis lazuli journeyed here, all the way from the mines of Afghanistan, traversing countless caravanserais and mountain passes, before finding a spot on this dusty mat. You take a moment to trace the delicate gold wire that wraps each bead, marveling at the craftsmanship and the sheer distance those beads have traveled. Overhead, the walls cast a generous shadow, turning this marketplace into a cool alcove sheltered from the midday heat. You notice a delicate network of cloth awnings stretched between wooden poles, bright stripes of crimson, saffron, and indigo that sway like prayer flags in a mountain breeze. A small group of Thracian traders laughs under one of these canopies, sipping diluted wine from bird-bone cups and swapping stories of the Danube's monstrous catfish. One of them boasts that his catch once weighed as much as a donkey, though you suspect he's exaggerating to justify his hefty price. Your attention shifts to a squat stall draped in the softest goatskin, its leather almost suede-like to the touch. Inside, a Phoenician merchant cradles a tame wildcat, its fur striped like cinnamon rolls and eyes the color of storm clouds. Locals whisper that these cats were first domesticated here to guard shipments of grain from rodents, though stray cats have been slipping into walls and corridors since the city's earliest days. You reach out tentatively, and the cat brushes its head against your finger before hopping down to prowl beneath the cloth piles, its tail flicking with satisfaction. To your left, a hulking trader from the Hellespont looms over a wooden table piled with salted fish preserved in barrels. The scent is sharp enough to make your eyes water, yet a hungry soldier nearby lobs a slab onto flatbread and devours it with gusto, proclaiming it the finest meal in Ilion. You wrinkle your nose and remind yourself that for many here, fish was both sustenance and a luxury, especially when shipments arrived safely across stormy seas. You watch as the trader plucks a scale from his beard, examines its sheen, and tucks it into his tunic for reasons you can only begin to imagine. A sudden commotion draws your gaze. Two merchants squabbling over a sack of saffron so red it looks like bottled sunset. One insists the threads originated on the slopes of Mount Ida, while the other claims they came from Kashmir. You can't decipher who's right, but you can admire the theatrical flair with which they gesticulate, arms flailing like you're watching a comedy of errors performed in broad daylight. After a heated debate, they agree to split the difference and sell at a combined price that somehow pleases both. You step back, amused by the irony that saffron, once pricier than gold, has now become the currency of compromise. Just beyond, a wooden cart laden with carved ivory tusks draws your eye. Carved into each tusk is a swirling motif of dolphins chasing schools of fish in an endless loop. The trader, a lithe woman with silver-streaked hair, explains that ivory came from North Africa and was prized for ceremonial game boards and cosmetic combs. She lifts a small, polished piece shaped like a curling wave and offers it to you. You turn it over in your hand, feeling its weight in the cool smoothness under your palm. She smiles knowingly, as if antibiotics or modern plastics could ever match its elegance, though you suspect even she would agree it's hardly practical. Amid the spectacle, you notice children darting between goods, their laughter like tiny bells. They tug at cloaks, hoping for small trinkets, glass beads, carved bone dice, even a bit of salt cod snagged from the fish barrels. A merchant, recognizing the futility of scolding young thieves, tosses them a handful of coins no larger than buttons and watches them scamper away, their joyful shrieks blending into the marketplace chorus. The ground underfoot is a patchwork of flagstones, some polished black basalt, others rougher limestone. Between them, tufts of wild chamomile push up through cracks, releasing a subtle herbal aroma whenever someone steps down hard enough to crush a blossom. You pause to pick one, rubbing its tiny petals between your fingers and closing your eyes as the scent brings a calm midday respite. As you wander, you spot a scribe perched on a low bench under an arched niche, meticulously copying records onto a wax tablet. He pauses to adjust his stylus, which is fashioned from a sharpened reed, and you realize how vital these notes are, tracking who brought what, which caravan is overdue, and which merchant might have short-changed the city coffers. This bureaucratic precision ensured Ilion could levy tariffs fairly and maintain its prosperity, a testament to an administration as formidable as its walls. Finally, you find a quiet corner beside the eastern tower, where a young musician plays a haunting melody on an aloes and ancient double flute. The notes drift upward, weaving through the marketplace hubbub like a lone bird call at dawn. You sink onto a low step, close your eyes, and let the music carry you. In that moment, the clash of commerce and the rumble of hooves fade, leaving only the steady pulse of Ilion's lifeblood, trade, curiosity, and the unspoken promise that every merchant here has a story etched into these stones just as surely as the heroes carved above the gate. As the sun climbs higher, you wander toward a shadowed alcove near the city's eastern wall, where a soothsayer has set up his modest stall. His robes are a patchwork of faded colors, threads fraying like the edges of forgotten dreams, and his eyes gleam with a knowing light. Around him hang small charms crafted from bone, wood, and feathers that clink softly as the breeze passes. You hear his voice low and steady, murmuring a prophecy that seems to ripple through the crowd like an unseen tide. The soothsayer's words are cryptic but unmistakable. The walls will soon face a trial by fire, and the fate of Ilion hangs on the edge of a sword's blade. You watch as listeners exchange uneasy glances, some scoffing quietly while others clutch their cloaks tighter, as if the mere mention of war might summon it faster. You feel a chill, not from the wind, but from the weight of the moment, a collective holding of breath that seems to pause the city's heartbeat. A leather pouch hangs at the soothsayer's side, worn smooth by countless hands that sought answers and comfort. He pulls out a set of bones, each marked with symbols that only he seems to understand. The bones clatter across a wooden tray, tumbling like stars falling from a dark sky. He traces the pattern with a bony finger, then closes his eyes, speaking a prayer to the gods of fate and war. The crowd falls silent, hanging on every syllable, as if the very words might alter the course of destiny. You find yourself drawn into the ritual, the hypnotic cadence of his voice threading through your thoughts. The soothsayer's gaze lifts, locking with yours for a moment, so piercing you feel as if he can peer through the walls and beyond, into a future shimmering with uncertainty. You wonder if the gods themselves are listening, ready to tip the scales toward peace or destruction. Nearby, a young woman clutches a bundle of herb sage, thyme, and hyssop, offering them to the soothsayer in hopes of protection. The air fills with their sharp, cleansing scent, mingling with the musky aroma of incense smoldering in a bronze censer. You breathe deeply, feeling the herbal smoke curl around you like a protective veil, momentarily shielding you from the harsher realities waiting beyond these stones. Behind the crowd, a group of children sits cross-legged, wide-eyed, and silent, absorbing the gravity of the moment even as their fingers play with knotted chords. You smile softly, knowing that even in the shadow of impending conflict, innocence persists like a stubborn weed. Their presence reminds you that life in Ilion is not only about war and walls, but also about laughter, learning, and the simple magic of being young. The soothsayer's ritual concludes with a final toss of the bones and a whispered benediction. He gestures to the crowd, urging calm and caution, warning that while fate is often cruel, hope can be found in the strength of the city's spirit. His words ripple through the assembly, planting seeds of resolve that grow quietly beneath the surface. As you step back from the scene, the city's everyday sounds begin to swell once more: the clatter of pottery, the murmur of market haggling, the distant clang of a smith's hammer. You realize that life here continues, fragile but unyielding, as if the walls themselves breathe alongside the people who built them and those who will defend them. And though the soothsayer's prophecy lingers in your mind, you sense that the true strength of Ilion lies not just in stone and mortar, but in the courage threaded through its very heart. You turn away from the alcove, the scent of sage still clinging faintly to your clothes, and prepare to follow the city streets, eager to glimpse the daily lives unfolding beneath these ancient ramparts. The promise of stories yet told pulls you onward, step by step, through a city poised on the cusp of legend. You wander past the soothsayer's alcove and find yourself weaving through narrow streets lined with sun-bleached clay houses, their terracotta roofs glowing warmly in the afternoon light. Children dart between doorways, chasing one another with the reckless abandon only youth can afford, their laughter ringing out like a choir of bells. The scent of fresh bread wafts from an open bakery, mixing with the earthy aroma of wet clay and drying herbs hung in bundles from wooden beams. It's a sensory patchwork that feels both timeless and alive. You pause to watch an elderly woman sitting on a low stool outside her home, weaving thin reeds into baskets with practiced hands. Her fingers move deftly, nodding and twisting, as if the rhythm is embedded deep in her bones. You imagine these baskets traveling beyond Ilion's walls, filled with olives, dried figs, or freshly caught fish, destined for distant markets. She catches your gaze and offers a gentle nod and unspoken welcome, or perhaps an acknowledgement of the stories you carry as an outsider. Nearby, a potter spins his wheel with a steady hand, shaping a lump of clay into a vase that will soon hold wine or water. The wheel's low hum blends with the chatter of neighbors, exchanging news of the day, the coming harvest, the latest play at the amphitheater, and whispers about the Greek fleets spotted far off the coast. The potter's face is smeared with earth, and his smile is quick and easy, as if the act of creation itself fuels his joy. You follow a narrow alley that opens onto a bustling workshop where blacksmiths hammer iron into swords and spear tips. Sparks fly like tiny stars caught in midair, and the rhythmic pounding sounds like the heartbeat of the city. A young apprentice wipes sweat from his brow and offers you a shy grin, pride shining in his eyes. You imagine the weapons he crafts will one day clatter against enemy shields. and a shadow of unease passes over you. Yet here, in this forge, the future is still a molten possibility, waiting to be shaped. Your path takes you to a small courtyard where women sit together, grinding grain with stone mortar or weaving textiles dyed in deep indigo and saffron. Their hands move in unison, a silent song of labor and companionship. One woman catches your eye and gestures for you to come closer. She offers a small cup of pomegranate juice, its tart sweetness a sharp contrast to the dust and sweat of the day. You accept, grateful for the moment of hospitality. As you sip, you overhear conversations about the city's defenses and the rumors of war that ripple through Ilion like an unseen current. Yet beneath the fear there is determination, a collective resolve to protect what has been built over generations. Mothers talk softly of their sons marching off to patrol the walls, while elders remind them of stories where courage outlasted even the longest siege. A sudden breeze carries the faint strains of music flutes and lyres mingling in an impromptu street performance. Children gather, clapping and dancing, their faces alight with innocence and delight. You find yourself smiling, caught in the spell of their joy. It's a reminder that life in Ilion pulses not only in the grand tales of heroes and battles, but also in the everyday moments of connection and celebration. You continue your stroll, noting the small gardens tucked between houses, where herbs and flowers thrive in modest plots. The scent of rosemary and lavender fills the air, and bees buzz lazily from bloom to bloom. A cat slinks past your feet, tail high, pausing to rub against a stranger's leg before disappearing into the shade. It's a quiet reminder that this city, for all its looming walls and impending fate, breathes with a humanity that transcends the shadow of war. As the sun begins its slow descent, casting long golden shadows across the streets, you find a bench beneath a fig tree and settle in to watch the city slow down. The warm light glows on the stone, and the distant murmur of voices blends with the soft rustle of leaves. You feel a calm wash over you, a moment suspended in time before the story of Ilion moves forward once again. You move toward the shadowy outskirts of Ilion, where the city's imposing walls loom like silent giants, guarding secrets beyond your reach. From here, the landscape stretches wide rolling hills draped in wild grasses, dotted with olive groves and punctuated by the occasional cluster of cypress trees standing like sentinels. The breeze carries a sharper tang here, the mingled scents of earth and sea weaving together into a complex perfume. From this vantage point, you spot flickering shapes on the far horizon, figures moving with calculated stealth. Greek scouts, perhaps, slipping across the open fields to map Ilion's defenses. Their cloaks blend with the rocky terrain, and their movements are fluid, like shadows skimming over water. You catch a glimpse of a spear glinting in the sun, and wonder about the stories those soldiers tell themselves to steel their nerves. You'd probably struggle to keep silent in those grasslands, but they move with a practiced discipline born of countless campaigns. You press your palm against a weathered boulder, its surface etched with ancient scratches marks, left by scouts from long ago, or perhaps by travelers seeking shelter. The stone feels warm beneath your hand, soaked in sun and memory. Nearby, a wildflower pushes through a crack, its delicate petals defiant against the rugged backdrop. You think of the resilience required to stand here, where danger whispers on the wind and shadows gather like storm clouds. A hawk circles overhead, its sharp cry slicing through the quiet. You track its flight with your eyes, imagining the keen vision that allows it to spot prey from miles away. The scouts must rely on similar senses, blending instinct and training as they gather intelligence. You wonder what they think of the city's walls from this distance, whether they see strength or vulnerability. Your footsteps crunch softly on loose gravel as you approach a small knoll where a makeshift camp has been set up. You spot flickering flames contained within a circle of stones and the scattering of supplies-rolled blankets, dried meat, and water skins left behind in haste or as decoys. You imagine the soldiers who paused here, sharing whispered conversations and stolen moments of warmth beneath a blanket of stars. A thin plume of smoke curls upward, carrying the scent of pine and roasted herbs. You breathe it in, letting it mingle with the sharper tang of the sea air. In this quiet outpost, time seems to stretch, holding its breath before the storm. You feel the weight of impending conflict settle around you like a thick cloak, heavy but undeniable. Suddenly, a rustle in the brush catches your attention. You freeze, eyes scanning for movement, heart ticking faster. A lone figure steps into view, an older scout, weathered and lean, his eyes sharp beneath a fur-lined cap. He nods briefly as if acknowledging a fellow traveler, then melts back into the shadows with the practiced ease of someone who has danced on the edge of danger too many times to count. You stand alone once more, the vast landscape unfolding around you like a living map of hopes and threats. The grass bends under a rising breeze, whispering secrets you can almost hear. You feel the tension in the air, the electric charge of a city under watchful siege. And as you turn back toward Ilion's towering walls, you carry with you the silent courage of those scouts' ghosts on the edge of history, watching and waiting. You find yourself stepping through the heavy oak doors into the royal courtyard of Ilion, where the air is thick with the scent of polished bronze and the faint tang of crushed laurel leaves. The space is vast, enclosed by towering columns, carved with elaborate floral patterns that catch the afternoon light like gilded flames. You notice the marble floor beneath your feet, worn smooth by the passage of countless sandals, and the soft murmur of voices carrying through open archways. At the center, King Priam stands tall and composed, his regal bearing offset by a furrowed brow that betrays the weight of impending decisions. His robes ripple in soft folds, embroidered with golden thread that catches the sun's rays in fleeting glimmers. You sense the tension radiating from him, like the quiet before a storm, and you imagine the burden he carries, the fate of his city, and his people resting heavily on his shoulders. Around Priam, trusted advisors and generals gather in clusters, their faces etched with concern and determination. They speak in low tones, casting furtive glances toward the walls as if expecting the threat of war to crash through the gates at any moment. You overhear mentions of troop deployments, supply shortages, and diplomatic overtures that have failed to quell the gathering storm. The atmosphere is thick with urgency, yet there is a stubborn thread of hope weaving through the conversation. You catch sight of a young messenger slipping through the crowd, clutching a rolled parchment tied with a crimson ribbon. His footsteps are quick and light, betraying a mix of fear and resolve. He approaches the king and hands over the scroll, bowing deeply before retreating with a nervous glance. Priam breaks the seal and scans the message with steady eyes, the lines of his face tightening as he absorbs the news. A gentle breeze stirs, carrying the faint melody of a lyre playing somewhere beyond the courtyard walls. The music is mournful yet resolute, a reminder that life within Ilion continues despite the shadows gathering at its gates. You imagine the king's mind racing through options calls to allies, rallying defenses, and the impossible hope that diplomacy might yet prevail. A soft murmur runs through the gathered court as Priam lifts his gaze, his voice calm but resolute as he addresses those around him. You can almost hear the unspoken words hanging between them. We will defend our city, our homes, and our honor. The determination is palpable, weaving through the courtyard like an unbreakable thread, binding king and commoner alike. As you step back, the king's eyes meet yours for a brief moment, and you feel the weight of history pressing down. This is more than a man in robes. He is the living heart of Ilion, a symbol of hope and resilience. You realize that beneath the grandeur and ceremony, the city's fate rests on moments like this, quiet, resolute, and human. You leave the courtyard with a new understanding, the echoes of strategy and solemn vows following you as you move deeper into the city's labyrinthine streets. The walls outside may stand tall and strong, but it is the spirit within that will shape what comes next. As you make your way through the shadowed halls of the palace, your steps echo softly against polished stone walls adorned with rich tapestries. The colors are faded, but still vibrant, deep reds and golds, woven with scenes of gods and heroes, battles won and lost, and the eternal struggle of fate and free will. The air carries the faint scent of incense and beeswax, mingling with the quiet hum of distant voices and the occasional clink of a servant's footsteps. You catch sight of Helen standing by a tall window overlooking the city, her silhouette framed by the golden light of late afternoon. Her posture is graceful yet still, as if caught between worlds, queen and prisoner, legend and woman. Her eyes are fixed on the horizon, where the distant sea meets sky, reflecting a silence heavier than the stones surrounding you. You wonder what thoughts ripple behind that calm gaze: regret, hope, longing, or perhaps the faintest trace of sorrow for what has been set in motion. A soft breeze stirs her robes, and you imagine the whispers of the wind carrying memories, conversations in foreign tongues, promises made and broken, and the distant laughter of a past life. She turns slightly as if sensing your presence, but offers no greeting, only a gentle nod that acknowledges your shared solitude. In that moment, the palace feels less like a fortress and more like a cage, with walls that hold stories too complex for words. Nearby, a cluster of courtiers speak in hushed tones, casting occasional glances toward Helen, their voices tinged with a mix of admiration and unease. You overhear fragments mentions of Paris, of fate's cruel hand, and the price of desire. The weight of those whispered words settles around you like a shroud, a reminder that even beauty can carry the burden of war. You take a slow breath, allowing the stillness to wash over you. The palace is alive with subtle tensions shifting, alliances, hidden fears, and unspoken hopes that hang in the air like dust motes catching the last rays of sun. You sense that Helen's silence speaks louder than any proclamation, a quiet testament to the complexities woven into the city's fate. As you turn away from the window, your fingers brush against the cool marble balustrade, grounding you in the present. You carry with you the image of Helen's silent gaze, a poignant reminder that beneath the grand narratives and towering walls, the human heart beats with fragile intensity, caught between love and loss, peace and war. You step back into the corridors, your footsteps blending once more with the palace's whispered history, eager to continue your journey through the lives and legends that pulse within Ilion's walls. You find yourself drawn to a section of the walls where the air carries the metallic scent of steel and sweat. Here, Ajax, towering and broad-shouldered, moves with the steady precision of a seasoned warrior. His armor gleams in the sun, each plate catching the light like a shard of the sky itself, and the weight of his shield seems to be an extension of his own arm. You watch as he inspects the ramparts, eyes sharp and unyielding, tracing every crack and crevice as though preparing them for an inevitable battle. There's a deliberate calmness in his movements, measured and resolute, that speaks of a mind honed by countless skirmishes. You imagine the countless hours he has spent in similar postures, standing watch over the Greek encampment, the walls of Troy visible just beyond the horizon. Despite the tension hanging heavy in the air, Ajax exudes a quiet confidence, a steel core beneath the battle-hardened exterior. You notice how his gaze lingers on the battlements, perhaps weighing their strength against the siege engines he has seen back at the camp. The thought of battering rams and towers looms large, but he shows no sign of doubt. Instead, there's an almost reverential respect for the craftsmanship that has gone into these fortifications, as if he understands that breaking these walls will require more than brute force. It will demand strategy, endurance, and an unbreakable will. Nearby, a cluster of soldiers stand at ease, watching Ajax with a mixture of admiration and hope. You sense that, to them, he is more than a commander. He's a symbol of the Achaean resolve, a living bulwark against the uncertainty of war. His presence alone seems to bolster their spirits, lending strength to those who face the daunting task ahead. As you follow his inspection, you notice subtle signs of preparation. Fresh piles of sandbags stacked at key points, sharpened stakes ready to be driven into the ground, and a network of trenches dug to funnel attackers into kill zones. The attention to detail is meticulous, evidence of hard-won lessons learned through blood and fire. Ajax pauses at a vantage point overlooking the plains beyond Ilion, his silhouette framed against the fading light. He pulls his cloak tighter around his broad shoulders and lets out a low breath. A brief moment of stillness before the storm. You can almost hear the unspoken vow in his eyes, a promise to break these walls or fall trying. You remain silent, respecting the weight of that promise, and as Ajax turns back toward his men, you feel the unshakable presence of a warrior ready to etch his name into the annals of history. In the fading light, his figure stands tall, a testament to strength, honor, and the relentless pursuit of victory. You find yourself moving through a quieter part of the city, where the shadows stretch long and the scent of lavender mingles with warm stone. Here, Paris wanders alone, his steps unhurried, but heavy with the weight of his choices. His gaze drifts between the distant hills and the bustling streets. Caught somewhere between guilt and desire, you sense the turmoil within him, the pull of duty and the restless ache of longing etched deep into every line of his face. He pauses by a small fountain, the water murmuring softly over smooth pebbles, and you watch as he cups his hands to drink. The sound is gentle, almost intimate, breaking the stillness of the evening. You wonder what thoughts flicker through his mind, memories of laughter and light, or the darkening shadow of what might come. As he leans against a column, Paris's eyes close briefly, and you catch a fleeting glimpse of vulnerability beneath the mask of princely poise. It's the moment before a storm, quiet and fragile, as if he's balancing on the edge of a precipice. You imagine the internal dialogue of battle between his heart's desire and the stark realities that surround him. Nearby, a group of women gathers around a fire, weaving garlands of fresh flowers and humming soft songs. Their voices rise and fall like waves, offering a soothing counterpoint to the prince's solitary mood. One of them looks toward Paris, her eyes filled with a mixture of sympathy and hope, as if wishing to cradle his burden in a shared embrace. You follow Paris as he moves away from the fountain, and into a narrow garden path lined with olive trees. The air is cooler here, shaded and fragrant, the leaves whispering secrets in the breeze. He stops beneath a gnarled branch and reaches up, tracing the rough bark with his fingers, a grounding gesture amid swirling uncertainty. A soft rustle draws his attention to a pair of doves nesting nearby, cooing softly in the fading light. You sense that these gentle creatures embody the peace he longs for, but fears he may never grasp. Paris's gaze lingers on them, a silent plea for a future unmarked by conflict. As twilight deepens, the city's lights begin to flicker, oil lamps casting warm pools of glow along winding streets. Paris moves toward the palace, his silhouette blending into the growing dusk. You feel the tension in the air tighten, the unspoken sense that choices made in shadows ripple far beyond these walls. In this quiet moment, you recognize the complexity of his struggle. A prince torn between love and loyalty, between dreams and duty. And as you watch him disappear into the night, you carry with you the echo of his doubt and the faint hope that even amidst turmoil, redemption may find its way. You shadow Patroclus as he moves along the outer ramparts, his steps light but purposeful, a silent guardian patrolling the edge of Ilion. The sun is low, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers across the stone. His breath forms little clouds in the cool evening air, and the steady rhythm of his footsteps blends with the distant calls of seabirds returning to their nests. He pauses at a corner where the wall curves inward, scanning the horizon with sharp, watchful eyes. You sense the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, the knowledge that every patrol, every glance, every decision could tip the balance between safety and catastrophe. His fingers tighten around the spear he carries not out of fear, but out of readiness. The stones beneath his boots are worn smooth by countless feet, and as he walks, you imagine the echoes of those who came before, warriors, messengers, and sentinels who shared his burden. The faint scrape of armor and the low murmur of whispered strategies seem to hang in the air, a quiet chorus that only the walls remember. Patroclus pauses near a narrow-slitted window, peering through to the fields beyond. In the fading light, he spots movement, a cluster of figures crossing the distant plains, their shapes blurred but unmistakably armed. His jaw tightens, the tension in his body coiling like a spring ready to release. You feel the silent exchange of messages in his eyes, warning, determination, and the fierce loyalty that drives him. A sudden gust stirs the banners fluttering atop the battlements, their colors faded, but still proud. The fabric snaps sharply, a crisp sound that seems to cut through the twilight like a signal. Patroclus adjusts his cloak, eyes never leaving the horizon, ready to relay news or rally defenders if needed. You walk beside him, matching his steady pace, sharing the quiet vigilance of this watch. The air smells of salt and wild herbs, a reminder of the sea's proximity and the land's rugged beauty. As night falls, the first stars begin to pierce the sky, their faint light a small comfort against the darkening world. In that moment you understand the paradox of a century's life, the loneliness and the connection, the weight of anticipation, and the hope that vigilance will keep catastrophe at bay. Patroclus moves on, a solitary figure etched against the ancient stones, embodying the courage and quiet resolve that sustain Ilion's defense. You stand on a gentle rise overlooking the wide plains where the Greek fleet gathers, an imposing armada of countless ships, their white sails billowing like clouds set loose from heaven. The rhythmic slap of waves against hulls forms a steady pulse, almost hypnotic, underscoring the tension thick in the salty air. From here, the ships look like a forest of ivory spears rooted in the shimmering blue, waiting silently for the command to strike. The harbor bustles with activity. Sailors shout orders, ropes creak under strain, and the sharp tang of tar and resin fills your nostrils. Men haul supplies, barrels of salted meat, bundles of arrows, stacks of fresh shields, preparing for the long ordeal ahead. The energy is a mix of anticipation and grim determination, the kind that comes when a storm is brewing and every hand must be ready to weather it. You notice a cluster of soldiers gathered near a large trireme, their faces flushed from the sun and exertion. Their armor clinks softly as they move, the metal catching stray beams of sunlight like fleeting sparks. You imagine their thoughts murmurs of home, family, glory, or simply survival whispered in the shadow of the impending siege. A sudden breeze carries the distant cries of gulls and the faint melody of a horn, signaling the fleet's readiness. You watch as commanders confer beneath canopies, plotting strategies that will test the endurance of men and walls alike. The tension is palpable, a silent drumbeat in your chest matching the fleet's steady preparation. You crouch by the shoreline, feeling the cold spray of water at your feet, and gaze back toward Ilion's formidable walls rising in the distance. It's a stark contrast, the serene strength of the city's stone ramparts against the restless energy of the fleet poised to challenge them. You think about the countless lives tethered to this moment on both sides of the waters. Nearby, a fisherman untangles nets while telling tales of storms weathered and monsters glimpsed beneath the waves. His voice is low, rhythmic, weaving stories that feel like ancient spells. You lean closer, caught by the cadence as the sun dips lower, setting the horizon aflame with hues of orange and crimson. The fleet's flags flutter in the cooling breeze, their colors vibrant yet fleeting against the coming dusk. You rise slowly, a deep sense of foreboding mingling with awe as the sea-bound armada readies itself. The weight of history presses down, and you feel the thrill of being a silent witness to the opening act of a saga destined to echo through time. With one last look at the ships that seem both beautiful and menacing, you turn away from the shore, your steps leading you back toward the heart of Ilion, where walls and warriors brace for what lies ahead. You close your eyes and picture the mustering of the Greek army at Aulis, the campsite alive with restless energy. Beneath a sky brushed with early morning light, the earth trembles slightly under the weight of countless feet, hooves, and the rumble of wagons carrying supplies and siege equipment. The air is thick with the mingled scents of campfires, damp earth, and the sharp tang of metal armor freshly polished for the coming battle. Men move with purpose, some adjusting the bindings on their greaves, others sharing quiet conversations that blend hope, fear, and determination. You hear the steady clank of swords being tested, the rhythmic chant of soldiers marching in place, and the occasional burst of laughter cutting through the tension like a blade's flash. The camp feels like a living organism, each part vital and interconnected. Around the camp, tents stretch like a sprawling village of canvas and leather, their sides flickering with the warm glow of oil lamps. You catch glimpses of commanders poring over maps, their fingers tracing routes and defensive positions, plotting the complex dance of attack and counterattack. Nearby, cooks prepare simple meals, stew bubbling over fires, fresh bread wrapped in cloth, and dried fruits handed out as quick energy. The sounds of animals, horses neighing, dogs barking, intertwine with the low hum of human activity. A group of young warriors huddles near a fire, sharing stories of past glories and the loved ones waiting at home. Their faces are a mix of youthful eagerness and the hardening resolve of those about to face the unknown. You imagine the sight of the fleet waiting offshore, the sails catching the wind like the wings of great birds poised for flight. The tension is a living thing here, palpable and thick, threading through every conversation and every glance cast toward the horizon. Somewhere a trumpet sounds a clear, piercing note that cuts through the morning haze and sets hearts pounding in unison. In this moment you feel the weight of anticipation, the surge of purpose that binds these warriors together. The calm before the storm is electric, charged with the energy of 1,000 untold stories, and the fate of many resting on the edge of a sword. And as the camp stirs to life beneath the rising sun, you know you are witnessing the threshold of legend, where history and myth prepare to collide. You step toward the sacred shore of Ilion, where priests clad in flowing white robes gather beneath the early morning sky. The smell of burning incense curls upward, mingling with the salty tang of the sea breeze. The rhythmic chant of the priests fills the air, a low and steady hum that seems to pulse in time with the crashing waves. You can feel the weight of their ritual, a desperate plea for Apollo's favor as the city braces for what's to come. Their hands move in practiced gestures, offering bowls of wine and baskets of fresh fruit to the altar carved from gleaming marble. A sacrificial goat stands nearby, its soft bleating carried away by the wind, adding a plaintive note to the solemn ceremony. The priests' voices rise in unison, invoking the gods' protection and guidance, their fervor as palpable as the waves that lap at the sand. You watch as the high priest raises his hands to the sky, eyes closed, seeking signs from the gods. The crowd around the altar falls silent, waiting for any omen, an eagle's cry, the flicker of flames, or a sudden gust that might carry a message from Olympus. For a moment, time seems to stretch, every breath held in collective anticipation. A sudden breeze ripples through the assembly, stirring robes and scattering petals across the altar. The priests interpret it as a sign, either a blessing or a warning, and you feel a shiver run down your spine. The city's fate feels suspended on the edge of this sacred moment, balanced between divine mercy and mortal resolve. As the ceremony concludes, the priests bless the gathered citizens, sprinkling holy water and murmuring prayers that linger like a soft song. You catch a glimpse of a young woman clutching a small carved talisman, her eyes bright with hope and fear intertwined. The ritual seems to bind everyone present, a shared act of faith in the face of uncertainty. You step back from the shore, the sound of waves mingling with the fading chant, and carry with you the solemnity of that morning. The gods may watch from afar, but it is the will of those within the walls, prayers whispered in shadow and courage forged in daylight, that will truly shape the days to come. The rumble begins softly, a distant murmur that grows steadily into a rolling thunder, an ominous drumbeat of hundreds of ships converging on Ilion's shores. You stand atop the western battlements, feeling the ground vibrate beneath your feet as the fleet advances, their sails billowing like a vast flock of white-winged birds ready to descend. The sea itself seems to pulse with anticipation, waves sparkling in the early light as if the ocean breathes alongside the waiting warriors. From this height you see the chaos of the camp transforming into an orchestrated movement, rowers synchronizing their strokes, the rhythmic slap of oars cutting through water, and the sharp commands shouted over the rising wind. Flags ripple violently atop masts, colors bright against the haze of dawn, and the scent of tar and seaweed fills the air, a raw, primal perfume that speaks of long journeys and fierce intent. You lean against a stone parapet, eyes tracing the lines of ships as they form a crescent around the shoreline, ready to encircle and isolate. The tension in the air is almost tangible, a living force that tightens your chest and quickens your breath. You feel like a silent witness to the quiet before a storm, knowing that the stillness will soon shatter under the roar of battle. Below, you notice small boats ferrying soldiers to the beaches, their armor glinting under the rising sun. The sound of splashing water mingles with muffled voices and the creak of rigging. You imagine the soldiers' minds bracing for the landing, hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and resolve. Their steps mark the first footprints on a battlefield that will echo through time. A stray gull cries overhead, slicing through the thickening tension, and you catch its shadow flickering across the wall. For a moment, you find a strange comfort in its freedom, a reminder that life continues beyond the walls, indifferent to war and legend alike. As the fleet tightens its grip on the coast, you take a deep breath, the salty air filling your lungs and anchoring you in the present. The day has begun, and with it the fate of Ilion inches closer to its crucible. You know that soon the silence will break, replaced by the clash of arms and the cries of men. But for now you savor the charged stillness, the fragile calm before the tempest. The first assault crashes against Ilion's walls like a furious wave, shattering the morning's fragile calm. You stand shoulder to shoulder with the city's defenders, the sound of clashing bronze and shouted commands rising in a chaotic symphony. Dust swirls around your feet, mingling with the sharp scent of sweat, blood, and the acrid smoke of burning wood. The battlements shake beneath the fury of battering rams, their iron heads pounding relentlessly against stone that groans but refuses to yield. Archers line the parapets, their taut bows singing as arrows arc into the advancing ranks below. You watch as shafts find their marks, felling men and horses alike. But the tide of attackers presses on with grim determination. The ground trembles with the thunder of hooves and the shuffle of countless feet, a living entity bent on breaking through the city's defenses. A scream splits the air, sharp and desperate, as a section of wall shudders violently. You turn to see a battering ram crashing against a weakened corner, splinters flying as defenders pour boiling oil and launch stones to repel the assault. The acrid heat burns your face, and you step back instinctively, heart pounding as the struggle intensifies. You catch a glimpse of Hector rallying the defenders, his voice a commanding roar that cuts through the cacophony. His sword flashes in the sunlight, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. Warriors surge forward, pushing back the enemy with renewed vigor, their shields locked and spears bristling like the quills of a giant porcupine. The air vibrates with the clash of steel and the cries of the wounded. Amid the chaos, you feel the raw humanity beneath the legend, the fear, courage, and desperation entwined in every clash. You witness a young soldier stumble, his armor battered, only to be lifted by a comrade who urges him back into the fray. Nearby, a mother's anguished cry pierces the noise as she watches her son march toward the gates, his face set in grim resolve. You dodge a flying stone and steady yourself against the rampart, your breath ragged but determined. The smell of smoke thickens as fires erupt along the outer walls, the flames licking hungrily at timber and thatch. The city's defenders pour water and sand, battling the blaze even as they fend off the relentless assault. You sense the fragile balance tipping, the walls straining under the weight of war's relentless tide. The sky darkens briefly as a cloud of dust and debris swirls overhead, momentarily blotting out the sun. When it clears, you see new waves of soldiers scaling ladders, grappling hooks catching on stones, and shields raised against falling missiles. The defenders fight with every ounce of strength, their faces etched with exhaustion, but unwavering resolve. Through the din, you hear the sharp command of a trumpeter, signaling a counterattack. Warriors surge forward, pushing the attackers back with cries that echo off the walls. You join the charge, your muscles burning, adrenaline surging as you meet the enemy in fierce close combat. The clang of swords and the thud of shields fill your senses, a brutal dance of life and death. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows over the battlefield, the fighting continues with undiminished ferocity. You feel the city's heartbeat in the clash of arms and the unyielding spirit of those who refuse to surrender. The first assault may have been repelled, but you know this is only the beginning. The war for Ilion's soul has truly begun. You find yourself amidst the swirling chaos at the city gates, where the fierce clash between Trojan defenders and Greek attackers reaches a fever pitch. The air is thick with dust and the acrid scent of smoke, mingling with the sharp clang of steel striking steel. Your heart pounds in rhythm with the frantic footsteps and the shouted commands as men fight desperately to hold the line. The massive wooden gates loom before you, scarred and battered from relentless battering rams and attempts to breach. Warriors press against them from both sides, some pushing with raw strength, others trying to wedge themselves through cracks and splinters. The ground beneath is slick with mud, trampled earth and blood, a grim testament to the brutal struggle unfolding. You grip your shield tighter, muscles coiled and ready, eyes scanning for any opening in the enemy's lines. Arrows whistle overhead, some finding targets among the grappling soldiers. A warrior beside you falls with a harsh cry, clutching a wound that spills dark red onto the ground. You grit your teeth and push forward, the weight of the fight bearing down like a storm. Trojan archers unleash volleys from the battlements, their bows taut and swift. The volley punctuates the chaos with sharp cracks, felling several attackers attempting to climb the walls. Below, you see men using slings and hurling stones, while others pour boiling oil over those daring enough to scale the battlements. The defenders' resourcefulness and fierce will are palpable, their desperation lending strength to every blow. You catch sight of a young soldier wielding a sword too large for his slight frame, his face pale but resolute. He meets a towering Greek warrior head-on, their blades clashing with a ringing clang. The smaller man moves with a surprising agility, weaving between strikes and pressing his advantage. You feel a swell of admiration for such courage amid the carnage. The groan of the gate's massive hinges fills the air as the attackers attempt to force the doors open. The defenders brace themselves, throwing their weight against the gate to prevent it from giving way. The strain is immense, and you can see the cracks widening under the relentless pressure. Sweat and dirt mingle on every brow, the exhaustion beginning to show in trembling limbs. A sudden surge from the Greek ranks sends a wave crashing against the defenders. You are pushed back but recover quickly, using your shield to block a heavy blow aimed at your head. You retaliate with a swift strike, feeling the satisfying resistance of armor beneath your blade. Around you, the battle rages on, shouts, grunts, and the clash of weapons forming a thunderous symphony. Above the fray, a trumpeter sounds a call to regroup and press the counterattack. The defenders rally, voices rising in a fierce chorus of determination. You join the charge, muscles burning as you push forward, driving the enemy back with every step. The gates hold for now, but the battle has only just begun. As the sun dips low casting long shadows over the battlefield. The fight intensifies with renewed urgency. You feel the weight of every moment, the lives hanging in balance. The city's fate intertwined with the courage of those who stand firm. The gates may be battered, the defenders weary, but the spirit within refuses to break. The battlefield unfolds before you like a storm of steel and fury as Diomedes charges forward with unyielding boldness. His armor gleams in the slanting sunlight, every movement precise and powerful, a blur of calculated aggression. You can feel the force of his momentum as he cuts through the chaos, spear thrusting and shield raised high, testing the resilience of Ilion's walls and the defenders who cling to them. Around you, the clash intensifies. The sound of metal on metal rings in your ears, punctuated by cries of triumph and pain. Diomedes moves like a whirlwind, striking with deadly efficiency, challenging any who dare meet him. You watch as he breaches one line after another, pushing deeper into Trojan ranks, his eyes burning with the fire of a man who refuses to falter. Trojan warriors rally to meet his charge, their faces grim with determination. Hector's voice carries above the din, a rallying cry that bolsters their spirits. Shields collide, swords flash, and you find yourself drawn into the desperate ebb and flow of battle. The lines shifting like the tide, the walls seem to tremble under the weight of conflict. Stones stained with the sweat and blood of those who defend them. Diomedes' presence on the field is both inspiring and terrifying. He embodies the relentless force driving the Greek assault. You see him parry a blow aimed at his head, countering with a swift strike that sends an opponent staggering back. The fight seems almost choreographed, grueling, brutal, but with moments of startling grace amid the chaos. As the battle rages, you feel the heat of flames licking at nearby wooden structures, the acrid smoke mingling with the metallic scent of blood and sweat. The roar of the crowd soldiers shouting commands, prayers, and curses forms a fierce soundtrack to the day's violence. You take a breath, steadying yourself amid the tumult, every sense sharpened by the immediacy of life and death. Near you, a soldier falls, clutching a wound with a grimace, but even as he collapses, his eyes hold the fire of unyielding resolve. You realize that the battle is as much about spirit as strength, every man fighting not just for survival, but for the city's soul. You press forward, shield raised, heart pounding, joining the surge that drives back the tide of attackers. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows that stretch across the battlefield like reaching fingers. The fight shows no sign of abating. If anything, it grows fiercer, the stakes clearer with every breath. Diomedes continues his assault, undeterred by the cost, a living force challenging the walls and the warriors behind them. You find yourself caught between awe and fear, witnessing a storm of courage and fury that will be remembered long after the dust settles. And as the day fades into twilight, the relentless rhythm of battle beats on, echoing the unbreakable will of those who refuse to surrender. The air seems charged with a presence you cannot see, a whispering force threading through the battle's chaos. You sense Athena's influence, subtle but undeniable, guiding warriors on both sides with unseen hands. Her spirit weaves through the clamor of swords and shields, lending clarity to the desperate, lending courage to the weary. It's as though the goddess watches from the shadows, shaping fate without revealing her face. You feel this quiet power most keenly when a young Trojan archer steadies his breath, drawing the bowstring taut against the breeze. His arrow arcs true, striking down an advancing Greek before he can close the gap. The defender's eyes widen in disbelief, and you know that Athena's favor has touched this moment small but pivotal. Around you, the tide of battle shifts in subtle ways. The goddess's unseen hand balancing on a razor's edge. Across the battlefield, you glimpse a Greek warrior who pauses mid-strike, eyes narrowing as if sensing the goddess's watchful gaze. His next moves become sharper, more purposeful, every swing of his blade measured with divine precision. You realize that Athena's influence does not choose sides outright, but rewards valor, strategy, and honor wherever they arise. It is a delicate balance, a dance of fate and free will. The rhythmic beating of war drums blends with the clang of weapons, creating a pulse that seems to echo Athena's own heartbeat. You feel it in your chest, steady and relentless, urging you onward even as exhaustion threatens to claim you. It's a reminder that in this contest, might alone does not prevail wisdom, and courage must walk hand in hand. Near you, a veteran soldier recounts tales of Athena's guidance, sharing stories of battles where her favor turned despair into hope. His voice is low, reverent, weaving ancient memories into the present moment. You listen, captivated by the idea that gods might not merely watch, but act through mortal hands, shaping the course of history with subtle gestures. The battle swirls around you, chaotic yet tinged with moments of clarity and grace. Warriors on both sides move with renewed purpose, their actions echoing Athena's invisible counsel. A spear flies in perfect arc, a shield is raised just in time, a rallying cry cuts through the noise like a beacon. You feel part of a larger tapestry where mortal endeavor and divine will intertwine. As the sun dips low, casting long shadows over the battered walls, you sense Athena's presence lingering, a steady, guiding force amid the storm. It is not the flash of lightning or the roar of thunder, but a quiet strength that sustains and inspires. You breathe deeply, drawing courage from that unseen blessing, ready to face whatever the coming hours may bring. The goddess's influence fades slowly with the dying light, but its echo remains in the hearts of those who fight. And as night creeps over Ilion, you carry the memory of Athena's watchful eye, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope can be found in the unseen. You see the arrow fly, swift and deadly, its flight cutting through the chaos with cruel precision. Paris releases it with a measured breath, the bowstring singing a sharp note before silence falls around the deadly missile's path. Your heart hammers as you watch it strike, a single fateful shot that finds its mark. The air seems to freeze for a moment, time dilating as the consequences unfold in slow, terrible clarity. The victim falls a beloved defender, a pillar of the city's strength. The moment is electric with shock and sorrow, the battlefield's roar momentarily muted by grief. Around you, warriors hesitate, their eyes flickering with disbelief, and you sense the fragile line between hope and despair tremble. The arrow is not just a weapon. It's a harbinger, a turning point etched in fate. You glance toward Paris, his face pale and taut with regret beneath the helmet's shadow. The weight of that single act seems to settle on his shoulders like a crushing stone. Though he stands tall, forced to wear the mantle of consequence, you catch a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a question of right and wrong, duty and desire. It's a fleeting vulnerability amid the harsh demands of war. Around you, the defenders rally with renewed urgency, their grief transforming into fierce resolve. The fallen comrade becomes a symbol, a rallying cry whispered among soldiers, gripping their weapons tighter. You see fathers, brothers, and friends muster courage from loss, their faces etched with a determination to honor sacrifice through resistance. The battle rages on, more brutal and unforgiving than before. You feel the tension coil like a serpent, striking with deadly intent and retreating into silence. Spears thrust and shields clash, the ground churned beneath relentless feet. Flames flicker along the walls, casting flickering shadows that dance like ghosts. The city's heartbeat quickens in the tumult. You step back, breath coming fast, and catch sight of a small child peering from a ruined window, eyes wide with fear and wonder. The city is a tapestry of such moments, innocence, caught in the web of violence and fate. You feel the bittersweet weight of history pressing down, the cost of glory, the price of war. As the sun sinks lower, you feel the arrows echo, linger, an unyielding reminder that every choice shapes the unfolding story. You carry with you the silent grief and fierce hope, entwined like the roots of an ancient olive tree, strong and enduring against the winds of change. You stand shoulder to shoulder with Hector as he charges forward, the very embodiment of courage and determination. His bronze armor gleams beneath the fading sun, and his sword flashes like a bolt of lightning as he leads the defenders in a fierce push against the relentless attackers. The ground trembles beneath the pounding feet of warriors locked in deadly combat, and the air is thick with the sounds of battle-clashing steel, cries of defiance, and the thunderous roar of men refusing to yield. Hector's voice rises above the chaos, a commanding shout that cuts through the noise and rallies those around him. You feel the surge of energy as the defenders press back, pushing the enemy from the walls with renewed vigor. His presence is a beacon of strength, a symbol of hope for a city battered but unbroken. You catch sight of him moving with graceful power, striking down foes with precise, practiced swings. His every movement is deliberate, a dance of war honed by years of experience and unwavering loyalty. You sense the weight of his responsibility, not just as a warrior, but as a protector of his home and family. Around you, the defenders rally to his call, their faces set with grim resolve. Shields lock, spears thrust, and the clash of arms forms a relentless rhythm. You feel the pulse of the battle in your own veins, the adrenaline sharpening your senses and steadying your hands. The walls tremble but hold firm beneath this heroic stand. Smoke curls upward from nearby fires, the acrid scent mingling with the earth and sweat. Flames flicker along wooden structures, threatening to engulf parts of the city, but the defenders fight with fierce determination to contain the damage. You witness moments of bravery and sacrifice, soldiers risking all to save their comrades and their home. Hector pauses for a breath, scanning the battlefield with sharp eyes. His gaze lingers briefly on the city beyond, a silent vow passing through his mind. You feel the unspoken promise to defend Ilion until his last breath, a resolve that inspires those who fight beside him. As the sun sinks lower, casting long shadows across the battered walls, the battle continues with unyielding intensity. You stand with Hector, sharing the weight of this moment, the struggle to hold the line, the fight for survival, and the enduring spirit that defines Ilion's defenders. In this crucible of fire and steel, you recognize the essence of heroism not in the absence of fear, but in the courage to face it head on. And as the day fades into twilight, you carry with you the image of Hector's steadfast stand, a testament to strength, honor, and unwavering loyalty. You feel the walls beneath your hands begin to tremble, subtle at first. Then, with a mounting intensity that sets your pulse racing, the mighty ramparts, once seemingly unyielding, show their first signs of strain. Cracks spiderweb across the ancient stones, dust rising in small clouds as portions of the wall shift under relentless pressure. It's a moment filled with tension, the fragile balance between strength and collapse hanging by a thread. You step back instinctively, watching as a section near the eastern tower quivers and finally gives way, sending a cascade of rubble tumbling down to the ground below. The sound is deafening, a thunderous roar that drowns out the cries of battle for a brief, heart-stopping moment. Dust and debris fill the air, obscuring vision and sending defenders scrambling to shore up the breach. The city's defenders rally quickly, their faces a mixture of shock and fierce determination. You see men rushing to the collapsed section, hauling beams and throwing down earth to create makeshift barricades. Every movement is urgent, a desperate attempt to hold the line against the advancing enemy. The atmosphere crackles with tension, each second stretching as if time itself holds its breath. Around you, the sounds of battle continue, unabated clashing swords, shouted orders, and the pounding of feet, yet the focus narrows to this one critical breach. You feel the collective heartbeat of the city, pounding in the chest of every defender who stands firm despite the mounting danger. You notice a young soldier shoring up the wall, sweat streaming down his face as he works with trembling hands. His eyes meet yours briefly, conveying a silent message of resilience and hope. It's in moments like these, amidst the ruins and dust, that the true spirit of Ilion reveals itself, not in stone, but in the unyielding courage of its people. The attackers press forward through the breach, their ranks spilling into the city's heart. The defenders respond with fierce resistance, creating a chaotic swirl of combat amid the fallen stones. You fight alongside them, your breath ragged, muscles burning, every sense heightened by the immediacy of survival. Despite the breach, the defenders refuse to yield. You see a handful of warriors forming a last stand, shields locked and swords ready, determined to buy precious time. Their courage is a beacon amid the devastation, a testament to the city's indomitable will. As dust settles and the sun begins its slow descent, you feel the weight of what has been lost and the fragile hope that still flickers. The walls may crumble, but the spirit within endures. And as you prepare to face whatever comes next, you carry with you the unbreakable resolve of Ilion's defenders, the heartbeat of a city that refuses to fall quietly. The air is thick with tension as the Greek forces finally breach the ramparts, their ranks surging through the shattered gate like a tide breaking over a rocky shore. You stand amid the chaos, shield raised and sword ready, feeling the overwhelming rush of bodies pressing forward. The walls that once seemed impenetrable now lie broken and vulnerable, and the sound of clashing steel fills every corner of the city. You watch as the enemy floods into Ilion's heart, their faces a mixture of triumph and fierce determination. The narrow streets become a maelstrom of battle shouts, screams, and the clash of weapons, blending into a savage symphony. Flames flicker at the edges of buildings, sending smoke curling into the sky, while dust and debris cloud the air, stinging your eyes and throat. Defenders rally desperately, pushing back with fierce courage, but the breach has shifted the balance. You feel the weight of every step as the city teeters on the brink, each moment a fragile struggle between survival and surrender. The walls that held for so long now watch silently as the invaders press deeper, their presence a stark reminder of the cost of war. You catch a glimpse of a comrade faltering, his armor dented and bloodied, yet still fighting with relentless spirit. You move to his side, blocking a fatal blow, and together you push forward, fueled by the desperate hope that the city can still be saved. The streets echo with the clash of metal and the cries of those unwilling to yield. Amid the chaos, you sense the city itself trembling, a living entity wounded, but not yet broken. The scent of smoke and sweat mingles with the cries of the wounded, painting a vivid portrait of endurance. You feel the heavy rhythm of war beating in your chest, every breath a testament to the relentless struggle. As darkness begins to fall, torches ignite along the ruined walls, their flickering light casting eerie shadows. The city burns and fights, the lines between conqueror and defender blurred in the heat of battle. You steel yourself, knowing the night will bring new challenges, but resolve hardens within you. The breach is more than a physical break. It is a turning point, a moment where fate balances on a knife's edge. You stand firm amidst the turmoil, ready to face whatever comes next with unyielding courage. Ilion's walls may be broken, but its spirit endures, blazing fiercely against the gathering darkness. You stand amid the turmoil as Ilium descends into chaos. The once proud city, now a fragmented battleground where order and hope flicker precariously. The air is thick with smoke and dust, swirling like ghostly veils that cling to your skin. Flames leap from broken rooftops, casting an orange glow that dances across the crumbling walls, while the sounds of battle echo relentlessly, clashing swords, desperate cries, and the mournful wails of those caught in the storm. Every step you take is met with rubble and ruin. Streets that once thrummed with life are now twisted labyrinths of destruction, littered with the fallen soldiers and civilians alike, their faces frozen in the final moments of struggle. You feel the weight of sorrow pressing down on the city's shattered heart, a silent testimony to the price of war. Despite the devastation, pockets of resistance flare fiercely. You glimpse groups of defenders rallying amidst the ruins, their voices hoarse but resolute, fighting not only for survival, but for the soul of their city. Their determination is a stark contrast to the encroaching darkness, a stubborn flame refusing to be extinguished. You move carefully through the chaos, your senses alert to every movement. Shadows shift in the smoky haze, figures darting between ruins, clutching weapons or tending to the wounded. The city breathes in turmoil, alive with fear and hope intertwined, each breath a fragile thread holding the fabric of Ilium together. You come upon a small courtyard where children hide beneath overturned carts, their wide eyes reflecting the flickering flames. A woman cradles a wounded man nearby, her hands stained with soot and blood, whispering words of comfort that seem both fragile and fierce. The human stories unfold in stark relief against the backdrop of destruction, a tapestry of loss, love, and unyielding spirit. The smell of burning wood mingles with the metallic tang of blood and sweat, and the heat of the flames presses against your skin like a physical force. You see warriors locked in grim combat, their faces etched with exhaustion and fierce resolve, their movements fueled by sheer will. The city's pulse quickens with every heartbeat, a living entity battered but not yet broken. Amid the ruin, you find a small garden still lush with herbs and wildflowers, their scent a sharp contrast to the surrounding devastation. It feels like a hidden sanctuary, a quiet reminder of life's persistence amid ruin. You pause, letting the fragrant air fill your lungs, grounding yourself in this fragile moment. The city's fall unfolds around you in waves of noise and shadow, but you carry within you the echoes of resilience, the steadfast spirit that clings to hope even in the darkest hours. As night deepens, you know that Ilium's story is far from over, its legacy written not only in stone and blood, but in the hearts of those who endure. Flames consume the city, painting the night sky with streaks of orange and red that seem to bleed into the stars. You stand amid the devastation, the heat pressing against your skin like an invisible weight. The roar of the fire drowns out all else shouts, cries, the clash of steel, until all that remains is the crackling blaze consuming wood, stone, and memory alike. Smoke billows thick, filling your lungs with its acrid sting. Your eyes water and tears mingle with soot as you navigate the ruins, stepping over fallen beams and scorched debris. The walls that once sheltered generations now crumble into embers, their proud silhouette reduced to shadows in the firelight. You can almost hear the city's lament, a low, mournful wail carried on the wind. Around you, the air trembles with the frantic movement of survivors, figures cloaked in ash and desperation, clutching precious belongings or helping the wounded. Faces are streaked with grime and fear, yet beneath the despair you see sparks of determination, a fierce will to endure. You watch as a group of children huddle together, their eyes reflecting the flames, their small hands clasped tightly as if holding on to hope itself. You hear the crack of collapsing beams, the thunderous fall of stone walls succumbing to the inferno. Shadows leap wildly across the burning facades, animating the destruction with a terrifying life. The fire's hunger is insatiable, relentless, consuming everything in its path with merciless speed. As you move through the chaos, you feel the weight of loss settle heavily on your shoulders. The city's soul is laid bare in this inferno streets where laughter once echoed, now echo only with the crackling fire and distant sobs. Yet even amid the ashes, you sense the heartbeat of resilience, the quiet strength of those who refuse to be broken. You come upon a small alcove where an elderly man tends a tiny, flickering flame, protected beneath a battered lantern. His hands shake as he shields it from the wind, eyes fixed on the fragile light. You understand that this flame is more than fire. It is a symbol, a beacon against the consuming darkness, a promise that life, memory, and hope will endure beyond destruction. The night stretches on, heavy with loss and light, shadows and flame. You stand amidst the ruins, the city burning around you, carrying within you the echoes of Ilion's final hour, the fall and fire that mark the end of an era and the beginning of a story carried forward by those who survive. You find yourself moving through the smoldering ruins, the air thick with ash and the scent of burnt timber. The once grand streets are now littered with rubble, twisted metal, and the remnants of what was a vibrant city. The orange glow of dying embers casts long shadows that flicker across broken walls and shattered columns. The silence is heavy, broken only by the distant cries of the weary and the crackling remnants of the fire. Among the ruins, survivors move with cautious steps, faces etched with exhaustion and grief. You see families clutching each other, carrying whatever belongings they could salvage, eyes wide with disbelief and sorrow. Children hold tight to the hands of parents who wear the weight of loss like a shroud. The city, once alive with bustling markets and vibrant celebrations, is now a landscape of despair and fragile hope. You join a group gathered around a small pool of water, still flowing clear amidst the destruction. They kneel to drink and wash soot from their faces, the cool liquid of brief balm and the harsh reality of the aftermath. You watch as an elderly woman dips her fingers into the water, tracing the outline of her lost home, reflected in the ripples, her lips whispering silent prayers to gods who seem distant now. As you walk, You notice the scarred faces of warriors and citizens alike, some bearing wounds physical and others emotional. The lines between combatant and civilian blur here in the aftermath. All have endured the same devastation. You witness acts of kindness, a soldier sharing his meager rations with a child, a woman offering a blanket to a trembling elder, small gestures that kindle the fragile ember of humanity amid ruin. The city's gates, once proud and unyielding, lie battered and broken. You stand before them, the weight of history heavy in the silence. The walls that withstood so many assaults now bear the scars of their final trial, and you feel the immense passage of time in the cracks and fissures that mar their surface. Despite the ruin, life pulses quietly beneath the ash. Birds begin to sing in the trees still standing, and soft breezes carry the faint scent of blooming herbs in hidden gardens. You find a patch of wildflowers pushing through cracked stone, their colors vibrant against the grayness, a quiet testament to nature's resilience and the promise of renewal. As dusk falls, the survivors gather in small groups, sharing stories and memories. You listen to their voices, weaving a tapestry of grief, courage, and determination. The city's story is far from over. It lives on in these people, their hopes, and their unyielding spirit. You take a deep breath, feeling the weight of loss mingled with a stirring sense of hope. The walls may be broken, the city scarred, but the heart of Ilion beats on in the memories, in the lives of its people, and in the stories yet to be told. You find yourself among the weary survivors gathered beyond the fallen walls, their faces etched with exhaustion and relief. The air is thick with a mixture of smoke, dust, and the faint scent of herbs, remnants of rituals performed to soothe shattered spirits. The twilight sky stretches overhead, vast and quiet, as if offering a solemn canvas for reflection and healing. Around you, soft murmurs ripple through the group, stories shared in hushed tones, tales of loss, bravery, and the indomitable will to endure. Children clutch makeshift dolls, their eyes wide but hopeful, while elders clasp hands, drawing strength from shared memories and the fragile bonds of community. You feel the pulse of life in this gathering, a testament to the human spirit's resilience even in the darkest of times. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, littered with fragments of a city that once thrived with laughter, trade, and the hum of daily life. Yet amid the rubble, signs of renewal emerge, green shoots breaking through cracked stones, the soft hum of bees drawn to wildflowers blooming amid ruin. It's a quiet, persistent reminder that life persists, finding a way even after devastation. You take a moment to breathe deeply, the cool evening air filling your lungs with a sense of calm. The sounds of the gathering, the soft laughter of children, the murmur of conversation, the occasional song rising into the night create a soothing melody. It is a balm for the soul, a gentle assurance that hope is not lost. As you look around, you see figures moving with purpose, builders clearing debris, healers tending wounds, storytellers weaving the day's events into narratives that will carry forward. Each action is a step toward rebuilding, toward reclaiming what was lost, and toward forging a future shaped by courage and compassion. You feel the weight of history settling softly, like the evening mist, mingling with the light of countless stars emerging in the darkening sky. The story of Ilion is one of walls and warriors, but more profoundly, it is a story of people, of their dreams, their struggles, and their unwavering spirit. With a final glance at the resilient faces around you, you carry with you the enduring legacy of Ilion, a testament to strength in the face of ruin, to hope amid despair, and to the eternal human quest for peace and belonging. And as the night deepens, you let yourself be embraced by this quiet strength, knowing that the story continues in hearts and memories and in the soft whisper of the wind.